This is Changeling the podcast.
Welcome to Changeling the podcast. Come for the glamour, stay for the vibes. I'm your host Josh, and with us is your other host Pooka. Say hi, Pooka.
Hello.
What are we talking about today, Pooka?
We will be opening the pages of that most puissant of C20 tomes, the Book of Freeholds. It's actually quite short. I don't know why I said it was a puissant tome, but
It's
yeah.
dense.
It is very dense. It is.
Yeah, I have a lot of notes on this, given it was like 50-something pages.
Many of which were taken up by lots of big art. So
Yeah.
it's a very, given the size of the thing, it packs it in.
Mm-hmm.
So before actually launching into the book, we did not talk about freeholds as they are written in the C20 core, which it's pretty much, I think it is very similar to what was in previous editions. It's just kind of refined and updated a little bit. I think there might be a couple new additions as well.
Mm-hmm.
Additions, not editions. But I'd like to give a quick overview, if I may.
Sure.
So, changelings gather and hang out in freeholds. They can acquire freehold by creating it themselves, inheriting it, or presumably having it bestowed upon them, discovering it or stealing it. Becoming the freeholder proper requires investing glamour equal to the freehold's rating, and if it's destroyed, the freeholder gains that level in banality, but also gets the glamour investment back if they created it.
Does it say if that's points or dots?
I believe... Hang on, let me check.
Because
this is on
Book of Freeholds. That's what we'll bring up.
Well,
doesn't
right,
tell
yeah.
you.
Well, Book of Freeholds, I think it's 1 dot plus a variable amount of temporary.
There's different parts. Anyway,
But,
yeah, we'll get to that. Yeah.
So, yes, it is number of dots equal to the rank of the freehold.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're trying to make a 5-point freehold on your own, 5 dots of glamour, but often the burden is shared by many. But I guess all of these will be superseded momentarily.
Yeah,
So,
there's also some new trod rules
mm,
that got updated a little bit,
yeah.
but they had like one new type and slightly modified the existing ones. But
This ain't Book of Trods, though. Oh, that would be pretty cool, actually.
though it does have stuff about trods in here. So
Yeah. So other stuff, the rights of a freeholder, the owner gets to determine who's allowed to receive glamour from a balefire. Anyone who asks for food and drink and 1 night of rest, they have to offer it, but not necessarily anything beyond that. The core book says that a freeholder adds the freehold's rating in dice to any defensive rolls and gets half of that amount in soak dice. They also get to set the rules of the space in terms of like protocol, and breaking them inflicts a die penalty equal to the freehold's level on the offender.
which we'll cover. Some of these are just reprinted in here, which is really weird. Now that I didn't go over that. But I'm like,
They're fleshed out. They're given some narrative.
But some of it, it's anyway. We'll get to it. But
I will say, I think you're more down on the Book of Freeholds than I am. But
yeah, I loved it before we started this deep dive. Look at.
Something I noticed in the core book rules, though, I think the rule about harvesting glamour has changed, because if I remember correctly, it used to just be everyone who dreams in the light of a balefire gets a point, full stop. And now it's like divide up the level of the freehold with a minimum of 1 point if the freeholder allows it.
It was more. I think it was more complicated than that in 2E.
Maybe it was.
Like it had something about the rating, but they really break that down in more details in this book.
Regardless, I did find that this method, it's kind of another example of when I point to C20 being a glamour-rich setting, because if you are able to get so much glamour from a single night in a freehold, plus you have Chimera as dross, plus you have Revelry, plus banality is just a trigger rather than an automatic point, all of this lends itself to being soaked with glamour much more often than you might have been in earlier editions.
Plus, maybe not having to worry about Bedlam. There's
maybe, yeah.
rules-wise, as opposed to referencing to rules, you don't have to worry about Bedlam when it comes to getting.
That is something not in the core book, I believe.
Yeah.
It's just kind of, I don't think there's a hard and fast rule for if you spend too long in a freehold. In terms of types, First, there's a list of glades in the core book.
Mm-hmm.
These have sacred stones rather than balefire, which only the first dreamer next to it gets the glamour, not everyone sleeping in the balefire. And they are natural kind of wellsprings of
Mm-hmm.
glamour. So there are glens in meadows and fields, hollows in forests, eyries on mountains, subterranes in caves, grottos underwater, isles, which are isles, and rings, which are fairy rings. The last one really exercises my brain as a possible like temporary or sudden glade, like or
Mm-hmm.
ring of mushrooms pops up overnight, and that's a 1 point freehold for the week or the
Yep.
day.
And
Even.
then this book changes glades as well pretty significantly. So.
Yeah. The types of freeholds are the hearths, which are the most sacrosanct, and those are your cafes, your inns, etc. Fortified strongholds, thorpes, which are villages or, in modern times, urban neighborhoods, manors that function like an old noble estate, markets, homesteads, which make chimerical resources, and workshops, which make
Yeah.
chimerical items.
And there's one change too. Thorpe's didn't used to actually exactly be a freehold. It was a changeling
Yeah.
town, which may have multiple freeholds, but
It does state now that it's like a single freehold, but with multiple balefires,
yeah.
is how they make it function here.
Mm-hmm.
There's also some rules in the core book about creating a freehold where you have to find a wellspring of glamour. Used to specifically be a glade, and I'm a little unclear when we get into Book of Freeholds, like what the distinction is.
It didn't used to be required to be a glade in 2E at least.
I,
It, it could have like you could do well. Glades were only natural areas, not like in
yes,
cities and stuff. And you could
yeah,
definitely make freeholds in cities. You could have always made them from glades, but you could also have like I don't know, like a club or a coffee shop or like something where there was a lot of glamour already. You could kind of ping on that.
maybe it's if you're like igniting a new balefire from an existing one, there's more latitude or something. I don't know, but like to truly create one out of nothing, maybe it requires a natural
Hmm.
something or other.
Anyway,
I don't
well,
know.
we'd have to go back to the book to check. Or not.
Yeah. There's also a bunch of mechanics about like how much glamour to spend, how much to invest, and
Hmm.
the process of creating one is suggested as a good story option, which I agree with. It does feel like when you read the C20 rules, you're like, cool, I have everything I need. So why this book?
Yeah. Well, this book has much more detailed rules.
Mhm.
I this is not the only time in White Wolf they've had this kind of thing, but I could see a chronicle where I don't use Book of Freeholds, and I could see running another chronicle where I do, and it's
Mhm.
fine either way. Or even use it for like PC specific freeholds. I would, but maybe don't care about it for NPC freehold. It's just zeroing in with more details. I think this is the point of this book. It's fleshing it out. It's a supplement. It's not if you need a freehold, you have to buy this book.
Yeah.
Just like a Kith book, you can play a red cap without Kith book red caps. But
To me, it's a little bit like the introduction kind of points to this, I would say. The importance of setting for getting into the spirit of a story, but more importantly for
mhm,
Changeling specifically, and in particular the Kithain. The theme of community and sharing space together is such an important aspect to the game.
mhm,
And the Freehold is like the atomic unit of Fey society to me. So it should be one of the primary emphases in the game.
mhm.
If C20 had been an ongoing line, this is still probably one of the first books I'd have chosen for the slate, similar to how in first edition we got Freeholds and Hidden Glens as like the first supplement.
Yep,
I would have also added a Mortals book and a Dreaming book, but that's neither here nor there.
yep.
So yeah,
Well,
I
yeah. We could argue about the dreaming one just because Dream is a Nightmares is still
yeah,
good if you needed it right away. Anyway, but that's
it is still equally useful,
yeah.
whatever you may take from that. Anyway, so motivation wise, I think it makes sense. Execution
Hmm.
wise, we can debate.
Yep. So should we start into
Let's do.
deep five? So the covers of a Glade that they discussed later.
I like how it's these five presumably changelings gathered around creating a new freehold, and just one of them has a cat head.
Well, they're not creating this. I think this is like supposed to be at Uru, whatever.
Oh, I suppose it is. Yeah, I just noticed that like there's a sky above it.
Yep.
Interesting. Well, I'm gonna have thoughts on that later, but
Yep.
I do love Drew Tucker's art. So
And then this is published 2018, written by Charlie Cantrell and Steph Devon, developer Maggie Carroll.
the usual suspects.
Yep.
We get a nice little intro story about a motley preparing to defend their freehold from a darkness in the basement. which is a
Mm-hmm.
nice story hook. Something in the basement.
Yeah, and I think they describe what that is. They hints like
Yeah.
I think we should get them statted out later. What that would be.
Yeah, this is kind of like the Freehold and Motley / their players that become the
Mm-hmm.
through line for the actual construction process, which is neat to have that. There's a lexicon in the later pages of the introduction. I don't think we need to go through all of this except maybe a couple,
Mm-hmm.
important terms.
Yeah.
There's the Heartstone, which is the focal point of glamour in a glade, which is refined into balefires. The rights of holding, which are the set of rights and responsibilities a freeholder must observe to successfully remain in their freehold. And then my least favorite of these is ratification, which is the term for
Mm-hmm.
the moment a changeling bonds to their balefire. I feel like something a little bit more fun could have been used.
There was also a change that I'm not sure, a slight change of meaning of wrath here.
Yes. Yeah.
So I don't know if it was like that in the C20 core book, but it was definitely not like this before C20, where now the wrath is like a portal to anywhere in the dreaming, potentially, as opposed to being like the near dreaming equivalent. So
Mhm.
I don't know what to think about that. I have to think about it more.
I always thought of the
And
wrath as like the back door of a freehold. It's the door
yeah,
itself, and it usually goes onto a path, which is a trod, but not always.
yeah. I mean, in the second ed core book, it was actually the freehold was split into two pieces, one in the autumn world and one in the dreaming, and the wrath was the door in between them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And now it's a portal to anywhere potentially.
It's been broadened.
Yeah, or a place in the autumn world. Oh, place in the dreaming to another dream realm. Oh, okay, so you could have a wrath between somewhere in the dreaming and somewhere else in the dreaming. Still, okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, the original definition is still a subcategory of the new one, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Then we get chapter 1.
A brief study of freeholds
Yes.
starts with Mythic ages didn't really have what we'd think of as freeholds. They just had like places where Fae lived, and some of those
Yeah.
are, if they are around today, are now freeholds, including the Court of All
Yeah.
Kings, which was addressed in the book The Court of All Kings.
Oh, that's where I know it from.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, presumably off the coast of Ireland, and that's where Silver's Gate is that leads,
Yeah.
they say, directly to the heart of Arcadia.
I guess that's a wrath, so I guess that they did have that idea in the
Yeah.
money. And then the Sundering.
This is kind of like we saw this with Dark Ages Fae, and we actually get a Dark Ages Fae example in the form of
Mm-hmm.
Underbridge. So,
Yeah. So it talks about it's actually a place in it, and it's referring to it as a freehold.
mhm.
But it was like all the bridges would be one sort of Fey realm back during the Sundering. It's interesting with the tie to Dark Ages Fey because it also means like the way they're describing this is there was all these sort of freehold things in the Autumn world, and then there was still the Dreaming, which was separate. It's really strange because if you go from that perspective, Dark Ages Fey is talking about the Autumn world and the freeholds, but no Dreaming. It just doesn't
Yeah,
talk about it. So
yeah. Then the Shattering destroyed many freeholds, and the few that survived into the interregnum became sort of the last bulwarks against banality, such as the American Indian Center, which was assisted by the Nunyahi.
which we'll come to in the next chapter. No, not no later in this chapter, but so it was a Nunnahi freehold, or is a Nunnahi freehold.
And then the resurgence reignited many dormant ones, the
Mm-hmm.
evanescence damaged many more.
Mm-hmm. And maybe reawoken some scary ones that were
Yeah.
also hidden.
There's a little sidebar here on the Codex Compendia that chronicle Fey history, and the names of the books are the Black Compendium, the White Compendium, the Red Compendium, and the Green Compendium. And it's like, where have we seen that color scheme before?
Yeah, the green ones, the Green Compendium chronicles the history that never was but might yet be.
So there's some notes about freeholds in the dreaming. Freeholds are vital because they are these semi-permeable spots where the dreaming and the autumn world can cross-pollinate. Balefires crystallize the emotions and stories about where they're located in the autumn world, and then the freeholds kind of anchor these chimerical ecosystems, which is a term that I love here, both
Mm-hmm.
locally, but then also associatively, I guess is the adverb I want. Like, you can have a freehold with ties to very distant ones and kind of
Yep.
resonances between the dreamings they connect with.
And the Wrath would probably point to the same place in the or similar place in the Dreaming, which is one
Mm-hmm.
way to, even without a trod, you could travel between them quickly.
Yeah.
But so is this suggesting freeholds are only in the autumn world?
I guess technically they have to have a autumn expression by this definition, but we
Yeah.
do. I think we did see the term freehold used for like fully in the dreaming places before.
Yeah, in Dreams and Nightmares, they had it as
Yeah.
at a place of change. So autumn world to near dreaming to far dreaming, and far dreaming to deep dreaming, and maybe some weird things in the deep dreaming all have freeholds. So, but this
Maybe
is
they're
more
using the pre-shattering definition. Or something.
maybe.
Then with freeholds and changelings themselves, obviously a balefire provides glamour, but the freehold also shelters them from banality and mortal eyes. They are places to gather with your motley, and they often have a function associated with their particular aspect.
Oh, do freeholds still in C20 still prevent aging?
They are said to be timeless at one point. Time does not pass within a freehold, so that's why they need to have a mundane clock or something.
Okay.
There are scattered examples of freeholds throughout this section as well, just as like little
hmm
throwaway lines, and some of them are kind of cool.
We get more details on the Parliament of Dreams,
Yeah.
which is now making me have in now. So they always had it like each freehold in Concordia would send a representative to the House of Commons or
hmm
Chamber of Commerce. Yeah. Then there's now they're talking about like since David's return. So this wouldn't be a retcon so much as just advancing things. Now most kingdoms and duchies in Concordia have their own parliaments based on the same structure, which I'm like, I have a logistical question because like, does each freehold send the different representative to each like because you're in a duchy and a kingdom and Concordia, right? So do you have like three people that you send off, or is like the same freeholder going between the three? I don't know.
I imagine it's like the EU
These
Parliament.
are commoner freeholds, by the way. Yeah, it's like the EU. You have to do a different MEP versus
Yeah,
the.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, the sidebar was very useful, but really points to how unfleshed out the system is, like
Yeah.
narratively within the setting.
hmm
There's some other little notes throughout here, like we're told hearths, manors, and markets, which are subdivided into proper fairy markets and unregulated goblin markets. Those are the most
hmm
common types of freehold. I'm
I
okay with
love
that.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the goblin markets. And but yeah, there's different noble freeholds versus commoner freeholds are like very differently presented.
Elegant versus pragmatic.
Yeah.
I assume those aspects change like as the freeholds changes hands too, right?
Yeah. I think of all this as just ways commoners or make the changelings may talk about freeholds. These aren't rules like it's
Yeah.
like you have to say it's like this kind of thing or whatever, but and then we get to Stranger Dreams, and oh, this really annoyed me.
Yeah. Say more.
So earlier we have a Nunahi freehold. Here it says Nunahi can't have freeholds because they can only have glades. It's like, and then it seems the Menahune, and like this so pisses me off. And this is like such a racist thing.
To be clear, it says that they are incapable of harvesting glamour produced by Western style freeholds.
Yeah.
Now, we don't get any information on what the alternative is,
Well, it says
but
since the destruction of the higher hunting grounds, they now can't harvest from Western.
yeah.
So that before then they could. What?
I don't know. I mean,
Instead, they
it's
require untouched well springs of natural glamour only, which is just throw that out. And then we talk about the Hessian. I'm like, okay, why are you even? Clearly, you can show why they're not part of dreaming.
I do like the note about an anime liking to mingle with Kithain and their freeholds, but not really
hmm
needing their own because of anchors, because that at least
Yeah,
gives you like, when would you ever meet a Kubera? Well, maybe in the freehold.
yeah.
So
Maybe there are anchors nearby the freehold. And they're just come
yeah,
over to...
nothing about the Darkkin though.
Yeah. Well, the freeholds are only in the autumn world.
They still visit sometime.
Yeah. And then there's the Thalane freeholds,
Yes,
where the glamours, regular Kithain glamour is too bland for them.
their freeholds may have been stolen and twisted from the Kithain.
Yeah. And then yeah, I think this is this little paragraph is where Harbingers of Winter,
Hmm.
the
Yeah,
whole system there for Nightmare.
same authors.
hmm
Then we get to chapter 2, building a mystery.
I like the art before chapter 2. They're
Oh
like
yeah,
trolls with like hard hats climbing up something made of the indistinct art style really helps with this. I think. Like, wait a sec, is that a tree that they're wrapping around and using as like a construction site with like proper safety rules and vests?
well, you see the guy up in the tree as well, just like hanging out.
Yeah, that's a satyr, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Drew Tucker really is done a disservice when in black and white.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we've seen some of his art in the older books, and it just looks like a mishmash of splotches, but it works in color.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, here's where we get the more extensive information about mechanics than the core book had.
Yeah. This is where I have my problem this chapter, by the way.
There's an interesting point in the introduction that the smallest freeholds were the ones to survive the shattering, and I like that because it's like an extinction event. But
Yeah.
shall we go through the process that's given here?
Yeah. So what you need to do, according to these rules, is the players get together and they design a freehold as part of your chronicle, like as like session 0 thing, I guess.
I think you might need a separate session 0 just for freehold creation if you're
Yes.
going to do that.
But the whole thing is in a system that actually kind of reminds me of stuff I've seen in other games, including Nobilis, which we should come to at some point. And it's supposed to be entirely consensus based, which I have.
Good luck.
Yeah, that. Well, somebody will yell their way to consensus, and everyone just gives up. That's my experience with consensus. But
I guess ultimately the storyteller can put their foot down about.
yeah, and then so we'll go through all the stuff. There's a bit at the end, where the players should then choose how much background dots to put towards holdings.
Yeah, it's a little bit backwards.
Based on the points they, yeah, I like if the players want their characters to share a freehold, whichever ones want to, and they shouldn't have to. Even talks in the next chapter, you can have your own too. Like,
yeah,
team up and then pool it, sure, and then as a pooled background, then you have to come to an agreement, and then figure out how many points of holdings you're putting in, and then that's how many points you have to make your freehold. I think would be my just like character creation. You don't make your character and then decide how many bonus points you needed to make that. Anyway,
I suppose though it's kind of like when you're doing the session 0, or even before you do it, you can kind of get a sense from your players of whether or not this is something they want to incorporate, and if it is,
mm-hmm.
you'd have to take a different approach to character creation, and that you'd have to leave, I guess, backgrounds and freebie points in particular for after all of this.
Yeah, I mean, you could figure out how many points you want to devote, but I think.
Well,
especially, yeah,
it's hard to do that without having the consensus though, because then you get all the way through almost and someone's like, oh, we really need to have this cantrip that costs 6 points like embedded into the walls.
Yeah, it's like, well, if you want to get that, go ahead and put more holdings dots.
Yeah, but I already spent them all on treasure.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so the steps, we start with brainstorming, which is exactly what it sounds like. Then acquisition provides a number of possibilities for how the owners may have gotten their freehold. Maybe they stumbled across a wellspring. Maybe one of them acquired it when they crystallized. Maybe they stole it, etc.
Mm-hmm.
We have archetype, which is that same list from before, but here we have the additions of academy, which are a teaching space, and repository, which are dedicated to lore and research. And each of the ones given here has like a couple examples. Something I do like is that each different archetype offers its freeholder bonus to specific roles. For example, for a repository, any lore role gets a -2 difficulty for the freeholder while they reside within. So I like that as an optional benefit. And there's some beautifully inventive story hooks mixed in here. Like, if nothing else, I think that this section, like whether or not you want to go all in on the mechanics, there's some good little story seeds here for locations.
Oh, definitely.
And I like it.
And I've done this before. Like, the mechanics work pretty good for, yeah.
I like that we get the Library of Alexandria too as a freehold. So, then we have aspect, which it has no mechanical benefit, but it describes like the function or how you would describe the place more than its category. So like, is it a nightclub? Is it an art mart?
Yeah.
Is it an apartment block or an abandoned playground?
In some ways, it's the most important part. Like, it's the same as like, what does your character look like? Where do they live? What kind of, do they have a job? Do they have friends? Like, it's that kind of question, but about the freehold character.
It's kind of like the concept on the character sheet, like the actual field concept that you see sometimes.
But it's also like Feymine and mortal seeming and all that. Yeah.
Then appearance, decide how the freehold looks in the autumn world and where it's located.
Sorry, that's like Feymine and mortal seeming. Yeah.
And then hierarchy, wherein the creators of the freehold decide how to divide the proprietor's privileges. I'm a little unclear on how that works, but I guess it's along the lines of those benefits that were listed in the C20
Mm-hmm.
core book can be shared as the Motley decides. So things like who decides who gets glamour from the balefire, who decides who's allowed to stay for
Yeah.
hospitality, that kind of thing.
It says the players should be happy with the outcome, but not necessarily the characters. Like, okay, that's fine, but it's also
Yeah.
anyway.
And it's very much a process focused on a group creating a freehold together,
Yeah,
which is not always what you're going to have.
no, like I've definitely had it where like individual players have like a
Mm-hmm.
1 or 2 freehold. Like that's not.
Yeah. If there is a conflict in protocol between two of the proprietors, the last one's mandate always takes priority.
Mm-hmm.
And all of this, I imagine, gets like really complex if you're designing a thorpe with multiple
Yeah.
balefires. Anyway,
And then yeah, multiple. And it says, oh yeah, the rules of hospitality. Although this is if the troop is divided, but that's like the players. So it's saying if the players are divided, like something that's talking about
yeah,
player character conflict.
no, I think that's exactly it.
But I don't like that. If the players are arguing, then the dreaming decides based on. No, I like fourth wall breaking, but maybe not. The dreaming shouldn't be listening to... Anyway. The dreaming maybe shouldn't be listening.
The storyteller is the dreaming.
Maybe you should have like 2 storytellers. One is autumn, and one's dreaming, and then they just argue a lot.
Oh, it's like Wraith, but different.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so all of this is mostly like story-based design, and then comes the fun part, because then you have the point buy features.
Yeah.
And this is very new.
Yeah. And so it starts. There's a little sidebar starting on page 26, which has this little thing that I caught that I was very confused by. So it's talking about, oh, you could put all your points into this, but it will have other problems. You can invest more holding dots and spend more feature points on Balefire. During play, once you've already created a character, how do you get more holding dots? What's the XP cost? Or
I mean, I guess the storyteller just
yeah,
grants them, but I usually use like the M20 system of
yeah,
whatever it is.
but that's just a little. There's just little nitpicky things in this chapter where it's like this. I thought
Yeah.
anyway.
I imagine we've talked about this with some of the other material we've looked at, but it's kind of an open question to me how much of this was like intended for the core book and then bumped, how much was developed
Mm-hmm.
after different parts of the core book were completed, because this was a stretch goal for the
Yeah,
Kickstarter. So, in any case, so once
yeah.
you pull your holdings dots together, each dot gives you 3 feature points, which can be spent on a variety of things. There's
Mm-hmm.
Balefire, which generates glamour on a point by point basis. And there is a cool little bit about if you decide not to put any points into Balefire.
Yeah.
Size from 1 to 5 is the physical volume of the freehold. Sanctuary is, I guess it supersedes the rule in C20 core, or I guess it elaborates on it. But this is the bonus dice of defense that the freeholder
Mm-hmm.
gets.
Yeah, well, just like how in the C20 core, the holdings rating determined the
Yeah.
size of the how much glamour you get. So this is splitting it all up. So you could have a very protected low glamour, or a high glamour, low protected, or big, or
Yeah.
resources.
Resources can be chimerical or mundane, which I thought was interesting. It is
Mm-hmm.
exactly as wiggly as the regular background, I think. Like, just
Yep,
it's going to be lots of
but even
negotiations.
more so because it's also chimerical and
Yeah.
yeah.
Passages opens additional wraths and trods beyond the first default one.
Mm-hmm.
It says it's a free wrath or trod, but I'm not exactly sure how you'd have the latter without the former.
Well, you could have okay, so you get 1 wrath and you get 1 trod always, but
It
you're
says or, though.
no, but you always get 1 wrath and trod, or 1 free wrath, or oh yeah,
That's, yeah, like how can you have a
that's
free trod without a free wrath? It's like,
oh, that's confusing. Okay, I would go with one of both for free,
yeah, it's
but
just,
maybe
well,
just goes to the near dreaming equivalent and then worry about the extras.
yeah, I would say you always get the free wrath if nothing else, but
Yeah,
yeah. And then the powers, which include dross production and imbued cantrips, various
one of
things.
them's call forth the flame,
Hmm.
and I have a little thing on this too, where it's a 3 dot, so that's kind of high, right ish, and after a number of nights equal to Freehold's Bayfire rating, the fire produces its Covenant Ember in a flare, which is a treasure, but you still have to pay the treasure background rating to have.
Yeah.
If you've already spent the 3 points, I think you should just make Covenants of Flame. And if you want the Covenant to Flame treasure without that, then you should spend the treasure points. But anyway, that's a...
I guess because the 3 points for call forth the flame are not 3 background dots.
Yeah.
It is 1 background dot worth of holdings, giving you the capacity to repeatedly generate 3 dot treasures.
Yeah, but what does that do if you have to pay for the treasures anyway?
I guess that's true. I don't know. Well, it's a powerful treasure. So,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Kind of, but only against this freehold, right?
Well, it's like a portable balefire. It's like taking
Yeah.
the little piece of freehold with you.
Which, by the way, there is a mechanic like this, the penance in Exalted the Fairfolk.
Yeah.
So their freehold, Exalted the Fairfolk had this first. I wonder if it was inspired in it.
Lastly, there are quirks, which are just kind of built-in story hooks related to the location or nature of the freehold, or just unexpected twists that make for fun stories. And then you decide how to split the cost of it all at the end.
Again, I think maybe we should decide the cost up front, and then you can
Yeah.
revise back if you need to, just like you do with like other things. Anyway, so this is not, it's not like I hated this chapter. It's just I liked it a lot better before I read it again this time carefully,
Yeah.
and I would just make some tweaks and stuff. But
Yeah. So then we get chapter 3, freehold maintenance.
yeah, this first of all talks about freeholds are usually only owned by one person when they go through this.
After all that.
Yep.
So we have the Oath of Domain and the Oath of Regency, which are used respectively for taking ownership and investing glamour with a freehold, or assuming the rights and responsibilities of another owner, usually a noble with too many holdings.
So would you say the Oath of Domain would be dots of glamour? Just like it is in the core book? It doesn't say, but Oath of Regency says a dot of glamour, and then you do points of glamour. So I guess it should be dot of glamour.
I suppose, yeah. Yeah, I guess that's it. It does also point out in C20 though that even though there's always a minimum of 1 dot, there are other ways, like you can slay chimera or sacrifice a treasure or whatever, and I'm not clear in those rules whether that gives you part of the temporary glamour cost you need or part of the permanent cost you need,
Yeah.
or both. But the Oath of Domain reads, "As the land supports the air, as the water nourishes all life, so shall I serve, name of the freehold. So long as I draw breath and the ignis vesta burns, I shall be its guardian, else the dreaming avert its gaze from me."
I want a knocker freehold, like made by a knocker who was maybe too literal or a little bit careless or something, and the freehold's called Name of the Freehold with the
Yes.
square brackets.
Do you insert name here, take insert spouse here, as you're lawfully
Yep.
wedded, etc. So the rights that a freeholder gets, and they're called rights, but they're half right and half responsibility. There's the right of harvest, which is getting glamour from dreaming by the balefire, but you have to keep it fresh by telling a new story every embulk, else the balefire diminishes.
There's a little nitpicky thing I have here. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I generally like, actually, I do like this book, but I have lots of little nitpicks. What happens if you're living in a place that doesn't have a capital? Because you always have to get the fire from the capital freehold. So first of all, how does the capital freehold renew itself? And second of all, what if you're not in Concordia or whatever? Like you're in one of those smaller places that just doesn't have like Kithain rulership structures.
Well, it gives in the sidebar. It gives like a number of other places that balefires can be issued from. So presumably there are other options.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's just more important to keep the rituals rather than specifically get your brand of fire.
Okay.
Although it makes for a good story hook if like the Thalane waylay the torchbearer or something.
Yep. Like I keep picturing like the Olympic flame with this stuff.
Yes. Then the rule of hospitality, which I'm not sure why that's a rule and not a right like the others, but there it is. All who invoke this must be given hospitality for 1 night, else the dreaming revokes its protection from banality and gives the freeholder a banality trigger. So if you show up on their doorstep and say, "I need a place to stay," and they say no, then the dreaming gets angry.
Yep. Another banality trigger not in the list of banality triggers.
To be fair, this came out after that list. But
that's true. The right of mandate.
Yes. The freehold enforces its proprietor's will so long as they cleave to the freehold's aspect, else that enforcement is revoked.
Yep. The right of passage.
The right of passage, not the right of passage.
Yeah.
Confusing. The freeholder maintains the connected trods by rituals or actions in accordance with the trod's aspect.
Yeah.
Usually it's the same as the freehold itself, but not always. Failing to do this, the trods might start leading somewhere unexpected. And I do really like that
Yeah.
drawback.
Yeah. I like one of the examples of a platoon of army ants decides the freehold is a perfect forward base of operations to expand their empire. I'm like, yes, that's tying back to Kiths of Arcadia and Arcadia the
Awesome. Now we just need the whatever the mechanical ones were and the dragon folk and all
Mm-hmm.
that. So as long as the freeholder keeps up with all of these rights, they're good. If any of them are not maintained, then they lose their defensive dice bonus that they get as the proprietor.
Mm-hmm.
I'd kind of like, I mean, reading through this, so you remember how we had the Wayfarer's Escheat or whatever it was in Kith Book Issue, I think?
Mm-hmm.
I'd kind of like the Escheat to have some kind of repercussions for failing to uphold it. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
indirectly it does, like the right to life. If you kill a changeling, you're going to get a banality trigger unless you're a wilder.
Oh, see,
But the other
see,
ones,
I love the current way where it actually you have to be brought to justice, and then there's like a
mm,
fior, and the dreaming will support or hinder you based on the sheet. But
all right, no, that's fair.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, I like that there are punishments for violating the precepts here.
yep.
That's good. The section also notes that freeholders often find themselves as figures in local politics, whether they want to be or not, and there are
Mm-hmm.
repercussions to owning a freehold. You might have to defend it from rival fae, or dark chimera, or prodigals.
Mm-hmm.
The ownership may be contested. There's a really good passage here, actually, about how the original oaths of regency that I guess the Shi left in place before they fled, they didn't take into account the fae's eventual need for mortality. So then, like,
Yep.
when the Shi come back, it muddies the waters with respect to who owns what. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, right, yeah, y'all died and were reborn for 600 years in the meantime.
Becoming lost. So
Yes.
this is tying into actual bedlam rules for being in a freehold too long.
Yay.
And you become a lost one. Not you can become like it talks about the true fae who became lost ones, but it can happen to changelings too.
Yep. The specific mechanics that we get are if you harvest more glamour from a balefire than your glamour rating, I guess if you go over your glamour rating, you get an imbalance. Or if
Yep.
you spend a week there, you get an imbalance, which can be difficult to
Mm-hmm.
measure for anyone except the Shi, who, for whatever reason, always know exactly how much time has passed.
And everyone else gets clocks.
Yes.
Maintain clocks. I guess like smartwatches and smartphones would make that easier now.
I have to imagine those go haywire, unless they're like knocker tech. And even then, they
You
might
may not
still.
get great reception, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know where you plug them in. Here, hey, never. Here's my charging.
Yeah. We get some issues and necessary upkeeps that a freeholder must contend
Mm-hmm.
with. Neglect is highlighted, but beyond just not fulfilling the mandates, I'm not really sure like what it means to neglect a free. Like, do you have to mop? Is that
Yeah,
wiping down the woodwork? I'm not sure.
I think you just haven't been there for a long time. You just went off adventuring for a while or doing your job, or you went through the forgetting and you forgot that your freehold existed.
But it says if the freeholder is remiss in their duties, maybe it just depends on like what type of freehold it
Mm-hmm.
is that different ones.
Yeah, we talked about the rights and responsibilities. First of all, there's the right of harvest. You'd have to maintain that.
Yeah, shrug. You can also have chimerical infestation, including formerly the Wopatinga, but now mostly swarms of dreamweevils who
Yep.
steal glamour, and nightmare locusts who twist the balefire into dark glamour and inflict nightmares. You might also just have a jealous or desperate fae come by to reeve your balefire.
Mm-hmm. Also, banality triggers for the freehold.
Mm.
So if there's 8 or higher banality area, and that can be trouble because you have to then reform the mortals living there to deal with the banality. It talks about using reverie to reduce mortals' banality, but the core book has the quest of dreaming. I'm like, shouldn't that be what you do? But yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. Maybe reverie is enough to like shake them loose just enough to stop oppressing
Mm-hmm.
your freehold with their presence. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I like that ambient banality you can't fight back against unless you actually engage with mortals. I think that's a
Yep.
good aspect.
Mm-hmm. Oh no, I like that definitely. Yeah. Or you just host Liam and you just touch them all the mortals.
Perfect. Everybody bring it in. Group hug.
Yeah.
So there's a suggestion here that if a freeholder dies without finding a successor and withdrawing their glamour, so basically abdicating, the balefire and freehold wither and die. And I'm not sure how much I like this or if it always makes sense to me, because I feel like there should be some provision for it just going dormant, like until the next incarnation or something. I don't know.
Hmm.
I
But I
wasn't sure how I
mean,
felt
it's
about
not
that.
being maintained. It's not being maintained every year.
Yeah, but maybe it just shuts down.
Hmm.
Like, I mean, that's the whole point of the resurgence, right? Is that when the she
Yeah.
came back, they all flared back to life.
I think, yeah, I think there should be like two types of destroying a freehold. There's like, yeah, there's the
Well, there's
freehold
more
just,
than two.
well, no, but no, no, I don't. I mean, being destroyed should have two types.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like, there's like chimerical death and mortal death, and then I guess if you dump cold iron in the balefire, it's fey death. But
Oh no, plunk.
your freehold stops reincarnating. I don't know, but you should have it where one is like, yeah, it goes, the mists take it, but it's easier to bring it back
Mm.
versus it's dead, dead. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it goes into
yeah,
torpor.
chimerical death. That's the,
But they do give us a whole bunch of methods on how to destroy a freehold,
yeah,
including like all the cantrips you can use.
yeah. One of them's like directly successes of unleashing against this. I'm like, that feels weird to me, but
Well, I guess if you can't think of a specific cantrip to use, I don't know.
yeah.
But it does say all of these are easiest against an unclaimed balefire.
Hmm.
You can also dismantle it by choice, and they give the example of returning it to the Nunyahi so that it can be reduced back to its original glade form. That, of course, gets back to what we were talking about that
Yeah.
distinction, which maybe not. But
Yeah, if there was like Nunihi freeholds and then Menahune freeholds and then other Fae and other places have their own freeholds and they're not quite the same thing, I think I'd be okay with that. But
I don't think there's anything that says that's not the case. But yeah, we don't get any examples of
yeah,
those really. So,
hmm,
although there might be some, now I'm trying to remember like the different sort of examples that we get throughout chapter 2. I'm trying to
hmm,
remember, like I think some of them there were like Nunyahi owners
yeah.
involved.
But when they talk about returning to the Nunihi, it's turned back into a glade. I'm like, that's not.
Yeah. Oh, so Niagara Falls is one of the examples. It is a water aspect glade owned by a Mimigweshi.
Hmm.
So shrug.
Also, Niagara Falls is a glade. If
Yeah.
anything's built up anyway.
Oh, it also, another banality trigger is if you successfully destroy a freehold, which kind of feels
Yeah.
like too light a punishment.
I don't really get actually. Okay, so if the freehold's undefended and then it's easy to destroy,
Mhm.
I get like Chimera's eating it or something, right? But like, why would a changeling want to destroy a freehold that's undefended?
Spite, daunting. I don't
Yeah,
know. Take your pick.
but how does it talk about how to take over a freehold that's undefended?
Uh, I don't believe it does. No.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I mean, so creating a freehold, there is
Hmm.
theft as an example. So I assume if
Yeah.
a balefire is unclaimed, you can just walk in and I guess commit some of your personal glamour to it, and then you're the
Yeah.
freeholder.
I think I'd want more theft
So
rules. That would be.
yeah, grand theft freehold.
Yep.
There's also a note about how the underlying dream of a freehold's aspect can be undermined. The
Hmm.
odd but interesting example they give is the 30 Years' War and then the Scientific Revolution shortly thereafter.
Yeah. Okay. So the 30 Years' War summoned up a bunch of Thalane with a mini evanescence. So then the Kithain got together and basically created the Enlightenment to drive away the Thalane. Like, that's what it says here. Because the first thing I think about Enlightenment is Changeling Dreamers stuff. That's.
I mean,
Anyway.
if we're going to talk about the glamour of science,
I don't know. I find the Enlightenment to be the most. Those people are some of the
yeah,
most banal of the sciency people. So.
well, maybe. In any case, the destruction of a freehold weighs heavy on its proprietor's soul, and they are
Yeah.
sad. And
Hmm.
the chapter closes with useful bits of advice on incorporating all of these as ready made plot devices.
Hmm.
I quite agree.
Yeah. And then we get some great pictures of chimerical llamas or alpacas or
Amazing.
yeah. I think there's one of them flying in the top.
Yes. Well, there's the blue
Yeah.
one has wings as well. Yeah, this is the last freehold example in the chapter. So yeah, this is where we get sample freeholds, each of them with like the full list of traits and powers plus story seeds. Do you want to do the thing where you throw
Yeah.
names and
Ao's Well.
This is a 3-point academy freehold in a Nairobi park held by a troll, much to the local noble's chagrin.
The Chicken Hut. Okay, this is just, you explain this. This
Yes.
is making me laugh so much.
It's a 5-point mobile repository that is the echo of a certain grandma's hut.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued by the categorization of Baba Yaga herself as a capital O outsider chimera.
Well, okay. Well, you know how Baba Yaga fits into the world of darkness, right?
Absolutely.
Yes. So this is the other Baba Yaga with the other chicken hut. And this was originally owned by Unseelie Boggin. I guess the Unseelie Boggin was the first Baba Yaga?
Well, Baba Yaga, the noted Nosferatu from Vampire, is like
Yeah.
long dead in the canon at this point.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But no, this was during just before the Shattering. Like, that's when this freehold was created. Was during the Sundering. And then the original owner died just before the Shattering.
Yes. Its aspect is Lost Bastion of Prophecy as well. So,
Oh, and it sounds like actually the Boggin also went to Arcadia with the.
well, it is as you've looked for before, it is another example of a mobile freehold. So,
Yep. Anyway,
next up,
Fu Mei's shop. Or Maya?
Fumeli.
Meili. Okay, I'm trouble with the font.
Yeah.
So we have Chinese satyrs in Hong Kong, and
Yes. Well, and she as well.
yeah.
But I
So
mean, Hong Kong was in British hands for 150
no,
years.
I'm all just for like, let's just have lots of Fae and
Yeah.
freaking Asia. Like, it doesn't have to. There's the Hispanic or some other thing.
So this is a 3-point workshop in Hong Kong where the Autumn She proprietor makes clockwork creations.
Mm-hmm. And then the Geomantic Heart.
A 5-point repository in the French Alps, which is the headquarters of the Sorceress Crystal Circle.
This
Awesome.
should be more than 5-dot holding, though.
Weirdly, all of these freeholds go from 1 to 5, but then the glades when we get to the appendix are 1 to 10, and I'm not sure
Yeah.
why that is the case.
If any freehold should be high that they've listed here should be higher than 5, though, it's Geomantic Heart. Like the freehold for the Crystal Circle, like, come on.
Yeah. Even Taranar is only 5. It's like, oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
The New River Gorge Bridge.
A 2-point broken thorpe in West Virginia that has been twisted by a stray fragment of underbridge that came back during the Evanescence, which I really like, I have to say, as a story. Yeah, some of the story seeds in here are actually really great, and I might use them.
Mm-hmm. Shamrock's Beer Cellar.
A 4-point hearth pub in the Duchy of Moonsilver, and I have no idea where that is. I looked, I could not find. But it's basically just a pub. It frequently changes hands.
And then I don't know how to pronounce this next one at all.
Ujawi?
Okay, Jawi. That works. Yep.
That's fine. I'm going to say Ujawi, yeah. A 4-point homestead in the Peruvian Andes where a satyr grump breeds the alpacas we saw of many colors and wings.
Yay. So did you know when GPT-2 came out, so this is like way before ChatGPT, in the paper where they published it, they asked about, it was something about South America, and it ended up talking about basically like unicorn alpacas that had, some of them had 3 horns.
Beautiful. I mean, that's a dreaming realm right there.
Yep.
I like that they went out of their way to get a really wide distribution here, like geographically and in terms of inspirations. And there are characters and references throughout this book that point to the structure and politics of realms outside Concordia, which you can take or leave, but they really kind of come to the fore here. And I would say to anyone who does want to set their game outside of Concordia, like, here you go. You've got some ready-made starting points.
And we'll get to more of that in the player's guide.
Yeah.
Although some of it, I'm not sure if it lines up with this part, but that's fine.
We'll get to that eventually.
And then there's a picture of a... What's that a picture of, Pooka?
I'm going to say a mist-shrouded heath, but yeah, I don't know.
I think there's an eye in there, or maybe it's the sun.
I think there's 2 boars hanging out having a conversation.
Oh, I see them. Yeah, or muskox, maybe.
But this is where we're talking about glades. And it's an important and necessary part of the book because we have gotten some about freeholds in previous books, but I don't think we've ever gotten anything substantive on glades.
We had in Freeholds and Hidden Glens, some of the glens I think were glades, like some of the bits in it, maybe
originally, but and it's not like we get that much more here, to be fair.
But... So here is making a slight tweak based on the word natural.
Yeah,
which I really like.
Oh, okay.
So glades before were like, I don't know, the natural world untouched by human hands kind of things.
Wilderness.
Yeah, wilderness. Here it is pockets where the dreaming touched the autumn realm and it's like formed something kind of like a freehold naturally, as in no Kithain or whatnot deliberately made one, but it can be anywhere where glamour is wellspringing.
So that kind of goes back to my question before. I'm thinking like if there's a particularly beloved and quirky cafe, for example,
Yeah.
I like the idea of that becoming a glade, like a naturally occurring
Yes,
wellspring that just happens. It just kind of raises the question, is that what they meant here?
I think so because some of the examples we get.
They keep pointing to nature though. That's the like even the MIT one.
Oh, I thought one of them, one of the example. No, that was. Yeah.
Maybe earlier in the book they
I
throw
thought
one
they had a
in.
few little examples. There's something. Yeah.
Regardless, we do get 4 new types in addition to the list we had in the core book. We
Hmm.
have barrens, which are seemingly empty or lifeless, but rarely actually. Resilient urban green spaces become gardens. In the bogs and fens, you get mires, and in the desert, you can have oases.
Hmm.
Construction wise, they have the same point buy features as freeholds, except that any resources they generate are only chimerical. They have wellspring instead of balefire. I assume it's still the case that, as we saw before, like only the first dreamer to sleep in the area of the Heartstone gets the glamour.
I think this only produces dross.
It is free to do that. I would say this is presented as optional here, but that
Mm,
was the case before, right? Like a glade produced dross.
yeah.
So
Yeah, the wellspring says mechanically the same as a balefire. What does that mean?
I assume it's if you dream within
Okay.
proximity of the Heartstone, you receive the glamour.
Yep.
But yeah, aside from converting glamour to dross, the only powers that they have are lingering dreams, which is a bonus to whoever last harvested its glamour, and nature's bounty. Ah, yeah, so here it is. Only the first to fall asleep and dream receives the glamour,
Mm,
but nature's bounty allows it to be shared.
okay.
I don't know. Presumably, these aren't subject to the same mandates that freeholds are.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, there's no one there. Has to be there at all.
right. Like, so if you take holdings and have a glade, it's just you know that glade exists and maybe nobody else does.
And maybe you're protecting it. Like you could have a
Yeah, yeah,
glade.
yeah,
Like you could have built a fence around it or something. But
yeah. It's like an anime thing to do
mhm.
because they're not. There's no changeling investing a piece of their own glamorous soul into it to keep a balefire going.
Yeah.
So anyway, we get 4 examples.
Yeah. So yeah, there's the MIT Pocket Gardens, which are little gardens in MIT. This must be really popular because this is also talked about in the October Days series.
Yeah. MIT, I mean, talk about glamour of science. That's like
Hmm.
ground zero for that kind of
Yep.
thing. I like how the Kithain who frequent the MIT pocket gardens are like firmly resisting having them converted into freehold.
Yep.
They're like, nope,
Don't gentrify them.
yep.
And then there's the Niflhel Barrens, which this is what I was talking about with like I don't know if I'd count this as natural, but
Mm.
it's a ghost town in the Faroe Islands.
Well, no, it says that the Niflhel Barrens are the icy and unforgiving glade above the village,
Okay, never
where
mind.
the locals test their mettle against the chimera or whatever.
Mm,
So then, Uluru the Dreaming Stone. I really don't know how I feel about this. And
hmm.
note that this came out before the player's guide and before the spirit beings and everything that they kind of developed around the Australia dreaming. Nevertheless, I
Why
mean,
was it reopened? Yes, this is six dot. What was the history of it? It was the resurgence made it return, and they talk about a changeling who's, I believe, from one of the indigenous peoples of Australia.
well, it says didn't return until after the resurgence. So,
Yeah. Oh, okay, not by the resurgence. Okay.
yeah. I just think, given its religious importance, making it a glade does not feel great to me. But
I'm kind of like I kind of feel like either we say Australia doesn't exist or we need to explain how it fits. I'm not saying they did a great job here, but
I think when we get to the player's guide, we're going to see how there must be more around it in the player's guide that I am not thinking of at the moment. And
mhm.
like maybe I'll refer back to this when I type up my notes
Yeah,
for that.
I don't know any like the player's guide actually bugged me more than this, but I don't know anyone from that culture, so maybe I'm misreading
Yeah,
what.
that it's yeah,
Yeah.
I'm saying this without any kind of stake in the
Yeah,
actual.
like the way the player's guide presented, I thought would have been
Hmm.
seen as kind of offensive, more so than this.
Let's
But
put a
I
pin in
mean,
that for a few episodes down the line.
yeah, if you're from these cultures, let us know, please, because I live
Yeah,
very
yeah.
far away in a very different place, and I don't really know. I'm just sort of drawing inferences from other cultures. It's not.
We are literally on the other side of the planet.
Yeah,
So then, last but not least, Wonder Cave, a 10-point subterrane at the Cradle of Humankind site near Johannesburg.
yeah,
It is a pretty cool site, I have to say, like UNESCO World Heritage and everything, but still, 10 points. That is
yeah.
that is a pricey glade.
I mean, I wouldn't have this as being the only 10-point glade. Let's put it that way.
Mm,
Also, yeah, maybe that's offensive. It's like the other one's only 6 and this is 10.
yeah.
Is that should have been the way around?
It does say a multitude of subterranean glades, so maybe it's like
Mm-hmm.
all of them put together or something.
It's a glade thorpe.
Yeah, there you go. But
Yeah.
that's the end. There's not even an ad at the back, which I was surprised about.
Mm-hmm. Mine has like one of the smallest role playing books I own, the actual physical copy.
Yeah, no, it's very minute, but
Yeah.
dense. So dense.
Yeah. Yeah. Rereading it, I found more things to nitpick and didn't like, and there's stuff. Well, like any Changeling book, I wouldn't take it completely as written without adding any alterations or thought. Or,
Hmm.
but yeah, ultra. I would actually say this is a very useful supplement. I'm glad they made this as one of. If we could only get 3 supplements, 4 supplements. How many? Was it 4 supplements in G20?
5, depending
5.
how you count. Yeah.
Yeah, but if it's only one of those few handful, I'm glad this is one of them.
Yeah, because I mean, there's mechanics and options for like almost every conceivable situation. I mean, we pointed to theft as one that is a little bit underdescribed, but otherwise it's
Yeah.
dense with everything. And it still takes the time to like work in story options, which
Mm-hmm.
is fantastic.
Yep.
I think it's a good resource for players and storytellers alike that's been needed for a long time, sorely needed for the new edition.
Yeah.
C20 core is tight, but given how key this is to the setting, like it was definitely an aspect that could be expanded dramatically upon without any fear of like too
Yeah.
much, I think.
I wouldn't use the chapter 2 full rules for all your freeholds. Like definitely not like a lot of most NPC ones, but even a lot of the player character ones
Mm,
might be overkill. But
yeah.
if you want that, it's like when you want that level of granularity, it's good to have it.
It goes back to that issue of like with certain treasures,
Mm-hmm.
once you have it, the game becomes about having that thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think freeholds kind of fall into that same
Yeah.
category where you don't have to make the game about that thing, but this certainly facilitates you doing so.
Well, I'm used to like remember with my LARP background for Changeling. When I think of Changeling, the setting and the game, I think of it as a bunch of freeholds and the interactions thereof. Almost
Yeah,
like most LARP sessions of Changeling probably take place in a freehold.
makes sense.
Yeah,
Or perhaps a glade.
yeah, could be glade, something like the MIT Gardens, but it'd have to be a very public glade, at least among the
Yeah.
Changeling community. But yeah,
I know people that like used to LARP on a farm,
mm-hmm,
so I don't know. I guess that could also be a freehold. In any case, that's the book.
mm-hmm,
And a goodly book it were.
mm-hmm. So yeah,
I like it.
I recommend it as a thing to pick up. Anyway,
Take us out.
if you want to talk to us about it, you can send us an email, podcast@changelingthepodcast.com, or you can send us a toot, changelingpod@dice.camp. Definitely go check us out on our Discord, discord.me/CTP.
Virtual freehold.
Our virtual freehold. Well, you can join our virtual freehold from patreon.com for Changeling the Podcast. Become a Patreon, we'll let you into the secret special virtual freehold.
Yeah.
You can also follow us on YouTube or leave comments there for Changeling the Podcast, or on Facebook group Changeling the Podcast. So I know some people listen to us on the website. You can keep doing that if you want, but there's lots of podcast app you can use. And if there's any way of you like listening to podcasts that you can't get Changeling the Podcast there, drop us a line through one of those other communication methods, and we'll find a way to make that work for you, hopefully.
And all of the communication methods will have their links in the show notes to this episode.
Yeah. All the trods to reach our freehold.
Yeah.
And once again, I'm Josh.
I'm the freeholder known as Pooka.
And remember, you better not go on vacation in February if you have a freehold.
Don't let the wrath hit you on the way out. It is well known that when an idea is spoken into existence, it begins taking form in the dreaming. To ruminate on an idea is to give it chimerical strength and solidity, and eventually, one can go on a quest to explore and obtain the dream itself. Our careless speech has no doubt produced an entire landscape of skeletal notions and flimsy fancies over the last 2.5 years, and now this week they are joined by Grand Theft Freehold, a blood-pounding video game wherein you play a dastardly boggin mob flunky on the hunt for undefended balefires to secure and control. Featuring fully immersive graphics and a sophisticated AI, you have to balance the bittersweet memories of homespun lifetimes and the slow fade of your changeling nature against racing the clock through curiously empty pubs and abandoned playgrounds to sniff out that sweet, sweet glamour. For verisimilitude, and because every changeling criminal needs a sensible cover gig, Grand Theft Freehold also includes your part-time shifts at a local paper store, where you must fend off the banality of customer service by making as much origami as your triple-speed boggin hands will allow. That's Grand Theft Freehold, living on the edge, breaking and entering, rising in the ranks, folding massive quantities of colorful paper. We've reached out to a group of beta playtesters plucked from the ranks of our patrons, who include Derek, Dorcadus, Elleris, Hugo the Bogperson, Ia Bull, Jason Vines, Oreo, Raskaboos, Sandjigger, Sija, Terry Robinson, Tricerabeth, and Victor Torre. You too can be in consideration for the playtest pool, or just get shoutouts at the end of each episode by signing up for our Patreon at www.patreon.com/changelingthepodcast. We also appreciate reviews on the podcast listening platform of your greatest convenience, and you're welcome to hang out in our digital freehold at www.discord.me/ctp. Our balefire is always welcome to you, so for all who wish to rest beside it, as always, keep on dreaming.